When I was 8 years old, my grandmother died from cancer. And from that point on, I always said, I'm going to be a nurse someday. I think the thing that I love most about being a nurse here at Mary Lanning, we are with people during some of the happiest times of their lives, some of the scariest times, and some of the saddest times. And I just like being able to make a difference. Mary Lanning Healthcare. Your care, our inspiration.
And I stayed in denial over it for a long time. You know, I thought, I'm not diabetic, how can I be diabetic? So in not dealing with it, then it got out of control. And
Stephanie's not alone. Nearly 200,000 Nebraskans deal with diabetes. We'll hear more of Stephanie's story, talk about the problem and solutions on beating diabetes. Thanks for joining us. We're here to talk about diabetes. It's called an epidemic or hidden national crisis nationally and in Nebraska. Here's a few numbers that back this up. About 11% of Nebraskans have diabetes. Another 36% have prediabetes with higher than normal blood sugar levels. Most, more than 90%, have type 2 diabetes, and that's the focus of this show, talking with a couple of great experts. Emily Knezovich is an associate professor with the Creighton University School of Pharmacy and Health Professions, also a pharmacist, a certified diabetes educator, and you see patients at your CHI practice in Omaha. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And Virginia Chaidez is an assistant professor with the University of Nebraska-Lincoln College of Education and Human Sciences, where you're part of the Nutrition and Health Sciences program. Again, thanks for joining us. Again, most of this program we're going to be talking about type 2, but I think it's important that right off the bat we understand the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Emily?
Yeah, so it's a common misunderstanding, I think, of the general public, but there is a big difference. So the biggest difference between type 1s and type 2s is that type 1 diabetics don't make any insulin at all, whereas type 2s generally have more of just a resistance to their own insulin. Type 1s are often diagnosed earlier in life, whereas type 2 tends to happen later in life and tends to be more related to dietary and lifestyle kind of interventions that we can make as well.
And again, that's kind of the focus of what we're talking about. When we look at type 2 diabetes here in Nebraska, what do we see? What are some of the trends?
Well, we definitely see probably a lower than average national rate, right around 8% in the general population. But when you start to break that out amongst different groups, so looking at rural versus urban, you start to see some differences. Looking at different ethnic minorities, you also start to see some difference in rates, where we tend to see higher rates in ethnic minority groups such as African Americans, Native American Indians, as well as Hispanics.
Emily?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we see that's very consistent is that there are a lot of people that go untreated or undiagnosed and live with prediabetes for a long time without making any interventions to their lifestyle. So hopefully we can provide some information on changes that need to be made.
Right, because we're going to look at really a lot of practical information that I think people can use in this show. Talk about things like, because as we record the show, we're dealing with this here in the state of Nebraska and all over the world. Coronavirus or even the flu and its impact on people who are dealing with diabetes.
Well, for example, people who have diabetes or chronic disease are considered those people in the high risk group. So even as an instructor in my class, you know, we want to raise awareness around the fact that people in this category are at high risk. So to take extra precautions and trying to stay home. You know, if you're feeling symptoms, play it safe.
We definitely know that when people with diabetes get ill, their blood sugars become higher as well. So that can make it harder for them to recover, which would place them at even higher risk as well. So yeah, as many precautions as possible.
Is it a pretty significant difference, the risk factor for people that have diabetes with coronavirus?
Yeah, I would definitely say they're in the high risk population. So.
Okay. So again, we're talking about type 2 mostly today, and we're gonna hear the term modifiable risk factors a lot. What is that?
Well, those tend to be things that we can modify. So things that we have control over. So emphasizing lifestyle changes, so what you eat, physical activity, those types of things are definitely things that we have some control over, so we can modify those things to decrease our risk.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Sorry.
Oh, that's right. So we're going to see a couple of pieces here now that are about different ways, different programs that are involved in helping with modifiable risk factors. One is a program in Fremont that's getting kids moving and beating diabetes back at an early age.
No, we're gonna go out on that same path. Danielle, are you going? Yeah.
Beth Nackey gets kids moving. That starts with a little organized chaos.
Lexi, but I gotta scan you.
Beth is here.
Twice a week, some of the kids at this after-school program grab a snack, grab their running shoes, and log a lot of miles. They're taking part in RUN, a University of Nebraska-Lincoln Extension nutrition education effort funded by a Preventing Childhood Obesity grant from Children's Hospital and Medical Center. It's open to middle and high school students. The running part of the program is called Marathon Kids.
My mileage is 57 laps.
My mileage is 54 laps.
My main goal is that they will develop a love of being active and the social aspect of that.
Ready, set, go!
They run or walk 3/4 mile down and back laps on a recreational trail near the Hope Center. Mileage is tallied by scanning badges after each lap.
Come on, baby. There you go. Nice work.
You ready to run again?
Ali, let's make it happen.
So not everybody who comes out and is a part of this loves to run.
Good job, guys.
And they asked me that, do we have to run? I said, no, you can walk, you can skip, you can, whatever you need to do, whatever's fun for you.
I like how we're able to go at our own pace, and if we want to walk and we feel exhausted, then we can just walk.
Completing a marathon of mileage earns a t-shirt. After just a month, Denver and best friends Lexi and McKenna have already run more than 26.2 miles.
Running part and getting to run with your friends.
Yeah. You get to run with your friends and then you get free stuff.
This is a really important time to start developing those lifetime habits of healthy eating and regular physical activity. Because if we can get that set at this age, then they're much better prepared for a lifetime of attaining and maintaining a healthy weight.
Ready? Set. Let's go.
Nutrition education became another part of the RUN program when winter made running outside harder.
We know that the more active that you are, the more focus that you have on eating a well-balanced diet, it reduces that risk of obesity or overweight, and then those are risk factors then for prediabetes or diabetes. Because hereditary factors come into play also. So we may not be able to prevent it altogether. Diabetes may be developing down the road, but we can certainly delay it if we can adopt those healthy lifestyle behaviors.
You guys made it through the cold and everything. All right, you ready?
So we are going to talk about activity. Do we see Nebraskans becoming more or less active through the years?
I'm not exactly sure what the newest statistics are on that, but I know there was some trends towards improvement in the last decade or so as far as our activity goes. Mm-hmm. Familiar?
Well, I can speak more locally and to Lincoln. I mean, the Lincoln efforts definitely recognize, trying to promote a healthy community and trying to increase those opportunities for physical activity and bringing awareness around, changing your environment so that it's more conducive to, getting out and just being more active.
So how hard is it for somebody that's dealing with diabetes or pre-diabetes to get started and get involved in some sort of an active program?
There are a lot of opportunities out there now, from going to different gyms have discounts on their memberships. The YMCAs have programs even specific to maybe seniors that are available. And there's a lot of programs through kids' schools anymore that can hopefully prevent some of the issues that we just heard about in the clip as well. So.
Yeah, I would just piggyback off of that and say, as great as the efforts are that we're seeing, we still have to recognize that there are a lot of groups that lack awareness or lack those opportunities, and we need to try to even those out so that they have more of those opportunities.
Such as, and I know we'll talk a little bit more about disparities later, but in general, some of those groups are?
African Americans, Hispanics, Native Americans, we see higher rates there. And we also see an association with, poverty, lower education, lower income. And so these things are gonna create barriers for having, free time to do things that would improve their health. Yeah.
What are just some simple everyday things people could do to get more active and avoid falling into that group of being diabetic?
Yeah, I really just talk to people about just trying to move more in general, just anything they can do to move more. A lot of people, we have people who are working 2 jobs and they don't have time to set aside an hour for themselves to go to a gym or even do anything online. So any type of movement, parking at the end of the parking lot when you go into the grocery store, taking the stairs instead of the elevator, those are all just easy things to move a little bit more, burn a little bit more calories and help towards your weight loss goals.
Yeah. And I would just add to that, walking, it's a simple, accessible thing that a lot of people can do, and the moving more. I also emphasize changing the mind frame from thinking of having to clean the house as something negative to actually this is good for me. And so not only am I burning calories, but I have a clean house at the end of it. So
there's a win-win both
right.
ways. So how much do you need to walk to really be effective?
Well, the exercise recommendations are 30 minutes most days of the week, so 150 minutes a week is kind of what's recommended. But I always have the conversation with my patients that where are you now? And let's just try to increase maybe by 5 or 10 minutes a day, and ultimately that's a great goal to attain. But there are a lot of limitations physically too, people with extensive arthritis, issues with mobility in general that they can't meet those goals. So we have to find what's realistic for them. Right. And again, any movement is going to help towards their weight loss goals. And that's really the main reason that we're kind of trying to focus on exercises to get better glucose control related to that.
So kids and diabetes, how common and what are some things we should be talking about related to kids?
We are seeing a rise in type 2 diabetes in children. And again, emphasizing physical activity, making the right food choices, and what they're being offered in schools is a big part of that because that's where they spend a big part of their day. But also bringing parents and families into that conversation. And so helping educate the parents, passing that along to kids, but also including the parents so that everybody's getting the same message to improve their eating habits and increasing physical activity as much as they can with the family.
So what's that? A couple important takeaways if you were going to tell parents about, again, keeping your kids from becoming diabetic or pre-diabetic.
Yeah, I think just teaching them about healthy eating is an important thing and being an example for them too. So showing them those good eating habits, trying to include more fruits and vegetables in their daily routine and just getting more activity if they can in general.
For sure. And I would add to that, sugar sweetened beverages has become a really popular thing amongst the youth. And so educating parents to limit those choices in the household is really going to make a big difference.
Okay, we're going to talk about nutrition and diet in kind of the next segment of the project program here. Diabetes is a challenge for everyone, but more so for Native Americans. We visited a Ponca Tribe Lunch and Learn to see what's being done to change this.
What are the main 2 things that research has shown that can help prevent type 2 diabetes? Exercise. So exercise is one of those.
Every November, Diabetes Awareness Month,
maintain just a healthy lifestyle.
Sarah Pfeiffer hits the road with lots of information.
They actually put people on insulin right away.
Noon-hour presentations in Omaha, Lincoln, Norfolk, and here,
yeah, I see that more and more lately. So
Niobrara, for members of the Ponca Tribe of Nebraska.
Diabetes awareness is my overall goal, and diabetes prevention with, educating them on what can we do to help you guys decrease your risk for type 2 diabetes. So, we want to do education is probably the big thing, but kind of making it fun too. We're bending down.
There's bingo combined with simple chair exercises.
Sit and reach.
Health checks, looking at things like blood sugar, blood pressure, and vital signs. But a big focus is healthy eating.
And we're just going to cook it up.
Pfeiffer shows the group how to make Three Sisters mash.
This is pure maple syrup that we're using today.
A recipe from a cookbook focusing on Native American cuisine. It features corn, beans, and squash. It's a recipe that's part of her bigger message about healthy eating.
Just an overall healthy meal pattern, healthy eating guidelines, following those with, you want to, high in fruits and vegetables, those non-starchy vegetables, whole grains, lean meats, low-fat dairy, definitely trying to have that balanced meal pattern and eating pattern can be helpful.
Actually, it's really good. I'm surprised.
Gloria Hamilton was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes about 7 years ago. It runs in her family.
After having eaten a certain way for all of your life and then trying to eat more healthy, that's always a hard one for everybody. Everybody that has it.
I thought it was interesting they did not include dairy on here, though.
That seems to be one of my big triggers is potatoes, so I try not to do so many with those. But, it was easy to cut out the sweets. I'm not big on candy and desserts and stuff, so that was easy, but the rest of us not. When you like fried bread and soup, that's kind of hard.
What are the ABCs of reducing complications from diabetes?
Hamilton and others here face additional challenges. They live in a rural area where shopping is limited and it's harder to buy healthy foods, and they're Native Americans.
Actually, in the Native American population nationwide, it's every 1 in 6, which is almost double the rate of the national average.
The reasons for this are complicated. Genetics, environment, even history all play a role in the problem. Pfeiffer focuses on education and solutions.
Some people, might come in and not necessarily know that, okay, oh yeah, I do maybe have these symptoms for diabetes. Maybe I should go see my healthcare provider. Just kind of promoting that overall healthy living.
It probably strengthens, I bet this part right here is what it's feeling like, or your shoulders.
So we're going to talk about nutrition and diet. First of all, some quick tips. What can people be doing better?
Well, lots of things, but I always emphasize it's the little things that make a big difference. So again, emphasizing what Emily said earlier, starting where you're at. Don't do things drastically or unrealistically. Make small changes. So, for example, whatever it is that you're doing now, add a fruit or a vegetable to it. Figure out a way to do that. As much as you can, don't drink your calories. Your body processes liquid calories differently than whole food.
So that would mean what?
So not drinking, a big bottle of soda, for example. Okay, so focusing your calories on whole foods, right? And moving again away from those sugar sweetened beverages, because that's definitely a big tip that you can improve on.
Juices are another thing that we see. A lot of people think they're doing something healthy, but they're packed with glucose and carbs, and so it's much better to eat an orange than to drink a big glass of orange juice.
Exactly.
So.
The importance of label reading, knowing what you're eating and drinking.
Yeah, label reading is important, definitely, but it can get very confusing to people. So I a lot of times will tell people to really kind of focus on total carbs and try to limit their, probably mealtime carbs to about 60 grams of carb a meal. But really we want to look for as much fiber as we can, as low of calories and as low of fat. Again, it gets to be pretty confusing sometimes, so sometimes it's easier to focus on eating more of those whole foods and not worry so much about those labels, trying to avoid the prepackaged kind of processed foods as much as possible is usually a good plan.
Right, and also keeping in mind that not all carbs are equal, right? So an apple is going to be different than
a piece of cheesecake that would be 60 grams of carb, right? But you don't want to eat that for your whole meal,
right?
For sure. Right.
Good diets and bad diets.
I always say there's no such thing as a bad food, but there are bad habits. So again, focusing on what you can do, making those small changes over time and sticking to them. Consistency is a big thing. And I always say monkey see, monkey do. So as a parent, you as a model, that goes a long ways in helping develop healthy eating habits in your children and a relationship with food, to not be afraid of it.
Right. I think it needs to be something that's sustainable too. We hear a lot about low carb, no carb diets, and I think it would be hard to commit the rest of your life with no carbs. Right. So you need to think about something that you can do over the long run. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Because sustainability is one of the barriers for people sticking with, it is. It's hard to stick with something.
Right. Yeah. So if you can know how foods are going to impact your blood sugars, which sometimes you can do some testing to look at that, or if you're looking at weight as a marker of how well you're doing with your dietary intake, and seeing the foods that work well for you can sometimes be a good measure of what to continue eating and what to avoid.
That's right, because everybody's different too, the way your body responds to certain things. But also, other things going on in your life. Stress can add to, increasing your blood sugars. Being sick can change your blood sugars. So just keeping in mind to, be consistent, and as much as you can, make those healthy choices, make small changes over, the marathon, and just little things make a difference.
Yeah. So we know that diabetes impacts different populations at different rates. We heard about the Native American population has a much higher rate. You've done a lot of research in this area. Talk about some of those differences and disparities.
So with Latinos, that's the population that I focused on. You definitely do see higher rates, similar to, pretty close to African Americans, in fact. So if you looked at the rank, it's essentially you have whites, Hispanics, African Americans, and Native Americans, and so a lot of that is related to, of course, the diet, but we see certain dietary patterns that are prevalent in this particular group in Latinos. We see an increase in sugar sweetened beverage is a big one that we need to focus on. Understanding just the difference in the different types of carbs. Moving the longer that ethnic minority groups are in the country, we see a change with the acculturation level and the types of foods that they're choosing, moving away from traditional diets, moving to the more processed foods. So definitely you could say that there's an influence in what they're being exposed to when they're in the country. And so there's concern around, marketing of unhealthy foods to certain groups. And the fact that a lot of these groups might live in food deserts or have higher density of fast food restaurants and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of things working against them.
Yeah. So we heard from Stephanie Schreiner at the start of the show. 15 years ago, she was a marathon runner recovering from a major accident. Her doctor asked if she knew she was diabetic. She didn't. Here's a little more of her story.
And I stayed in denial over it for a long time. I thought, I'm not diabetic. How could I be diabetic? So in not dealing with it, then it got out of control. And eventually then I started to gain weight with it. It really runs in my family on both sides. So it wasn't a big shock there. You can pick your friends, but you can't pick your genes. And about every 2 or 3 years, I like to take a little class somewhere and get a refresher course and see what I'm doing, and I try to read quite a bit and see what the latest developments in diabetes are. And I try to exercise, every day. Walk several miles or ride the bicycle or do something like that to help burn off the carbs and sugar. And I really watch my diet more, what I eat, when I eat, and what I eat. And you need to avoid sugar and you need to avoid carbohydrates. It's really hard because that's everywhere. All your processed food, and the big killer is the corn sweeteners. There's no cure for it. You just have to learn to live with it. It's pretty tough. It's pretty tough. When I was in denial, my answer would be, it's nothing. But now that I really understand it, or I'm starting to understand it, and I realize this is for the rest of my life, I've got to do this, and that makes it. So they can be depressing. It can be a downer.
So that's Stephanie's story. What are some of the other stories of people that you've seen dealing with diabetes?
I relate very closely to what she said about how she was in denial. We hear that from patients a lot. And unfortunately, when they are in denial, sometimes high blood sugars that are withstanding for a significant amount of time can result in some comorbidities like kidney disease, eye disease, damage to the nerves that run into your feet. So I think it is important, and her message is very important, that if you are detected that you have prediabetes or diabetes, that you jump on the wagon and you get informed and educated and treated if you need to be treated.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, it's a feeling of being overwhelmed. It's just so much new information and so many lifestyle changes that they have to, all of a sudden, be able to pick up and start running with. And I think we don't do enough to address kind of that emotional piece in the beginning, to just acknowledge, what they're going through. But ultimately, we need to just remind people that they actually do have the power to make changes, and to actually improve their lives drastically with these little things that we keep talking about. Yeah.
Risks and benefits of different medications that people may be on.
Yeah, so I mean, once you come to that realization that you do have diabetes and you want to accept treatment, there are a lot of medications that we have available right now. I think one of the things I deal with a lot as a pharmacist is seeing that patients don't adhere or take their medications as their doctor prescribes. So we try to just educate patients on the importance of their medicine and the risks and benefits of taking them. And there are medications out now that have shown to reduce risk of progressive kidney disease, to reduce the risk of heart disease and dying from a heart disease-related event. So our medications are great, but we do have to take them. There are a lot of access issues with cost of medications that we hear about a lot. And I would tell you that if you are having those issues, we do have a lot of programs that are available through manufacturers or through different rebate programs that we can have. Just reach out to your pharmacist or your healthcare provider to get information on those.
Any quick suggestions about access?
Oh gosh, yeah, as much as you can, utilize those resources that are there, and hopefully we'll be able to share some of those today. But really, there are still things that people can have the power to do, even online, to assess like their own risk factors, to see where they might be if they don't currently have a diagnosis, to at least know where they are with the risk factor level.
Okay, so going to ask you each for a brief last little bit of advice before we have to go.
Yeah, I think my bit of advice is just try to use those modifiable risk factors to your benefits. So working on keeping your weight at a healthy level, working at trying to get as much activity as possible, I think is truly the best thing you can do to beat progression of diabetes.
A couple of things. I'd say make half your plate fruits or vegetables.
Okay.
That's a goal. Don't drink your calories as much as possible. Drink water, and move. Just move. If you can walk. I mean, there are things about moving and how our body utilizes glucose, that blood sugar. The more you move your muscles, the better maintenance you have with your blood sugar. So movement is a powerful medicine.
Okay, we've covered a lot in a very short period of time, and I want to thank you to our guests, Emily Knezovich and Virginia Chaidez. You can check out our website for lots of additional information and resources to help you beat diabetes. That address is netnebraska.org/diabetes. Thanks for watching.